Hi folks, this is Kellyanne with Church Windows. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Today we're looking at special donation situations. Let me get rid of the presentation on screen. Behind it I have our website. Before we get started, let me just show you, you don't need a workbook or anything to follow along with what I'm showing you today. But if you do own the workbooks or you're interested in purchasing the workbooks or what I'm using to follow along or guide me today, what I'm using is taken from one of our training workbooks. You can find that under Beginning and then going to Training Workbooks. Here it has some information about pricing. But if I go down to donations, what I'm using today is from Donations 104. Get my highlighter tool. Donations 104. And we're looking at the very beginning, special donation situations, transferring between individuals, inactivating, terminating a gift from an estate, and change a giver number. So we're going to look at all of that. Got a lot of little topics to look at. If it's your first time using the GoToWebinar toolbar, there was a little presentation going on the PowerPoint. Real quick, if you need to minimize and get the toolbar out of your way, there's a little arrow, red colored arrow. If you click on that, it will minimize. To open it back up, you just click that little arrow again. Excuse me. Rachel is also listening along, and I'm not going to unmute people, but there's a question panel, and you can go ahead and type questions in there. And as I'm working through the material, Rachel, if you type something in there, we'll just answer it for you. You might want to hold off to the end, though, and see if your question is answered as I'm going through the materials, because I will, at the end, read the questions out loud and answer them out loud for everyone. Again, let's try to keep those things topical. We're looking today just at donations, some special situations. If you have a question that's, a different module or more involved, containing or pertaining to your specific data, we might best handle that on an actual support call or an email. Let's go ahead. I think it's been a while since I've done a webinar. I think that's all the things I wanted to tell you beforehand. So let me go ahead and get my normal clicking tool back. I got two screens here. And let's get rid of this, and let's go ahead and look at Church Windows. So again, we're looking at special donation situations. I already have donations open. First thing we're going to look at is transferring donations between individuals. It's really easy to do. It's a newer feature to donations. Was put in several years ago, but it wasn't something you used to be able to do. You could transfer, but it would be all or none. With the new transfer, first we can access that by going up to Givers along the top, and then the fourth button under that, Transfer Donations. With this function, we can transfer specific gifts from one person to another, not all or none. Right at the top, you'll see it defaults to the current date range. If you want to change the date range, I'm going to change it back just because the person from the book had giving from 2016. So we're going to move everything from a father or son to a father from 2016 through 2019. Now I changed my dates and I want to click Apply Dates. If it's in red, that means you need to click Apply. And that means what I see on the left side will be giving from 16 to 19 through that date range. You can also use little minus or plus year to just change what's there back a year or forward a year. We want to look for the first thing we see is the From Giver. And in the From Giver field, that's where we want to look for the person we're taking the money away from. And we're going to take it from Jake Knox. I can start typing his name, or if they have a number, you can start typing that. So I can type 12, or I can start typing Jake, and it's narrowing down to what I'm typing. So we will select Jake Knox. As soon as I select him, I see all the giving from 1/1/16 to 12/31/19 below. On the left side, you're only going to see names of people who have giving. So if you look at that list and you're going, wait, this isn't everybody. If they don't have giving, they're not going to show in the From Giver side. Or maybe you need to change your date range to see the actual giving if that person should have giving. In the To Giver, we want to find the person we are moving the money to. So here I'll choose Nate Knox. And here we see he has a few gifts. We want to move everything over to Jake or to Nate from Jake. If we only wanted to move certain things, though, I could click on Unselect All, And notice this first column is the little select checkbox. I could just check a few and hit transfer selected, and it tells me here, it sees that I just checked 2, says it's going to reverse them and repost them to Nate. So if I want to do that, I could say yes, and it moves it over. And maybe I decide, well, wait a minute, I want to move everything over. It automatically defaults to have everything selected. If you accidentally unselect them, you can click select all at the bottom. And then we can click transfer selected. It tells me it's going to reverse all 8 of these and move them over to Nate. So I can say yes. The transactions were created, gives me those transaction numbers if you wanted to see those in Browse. We don't have time for me to go do that, so we're just going to say OK here, and we can see all of this is now on Nate. So really easy way to move lots of all the giving or just selected gifts from one person to another. Very easy. All right, so I'll go ahead and close that. That's our first small topic. Like I said, we got lots of little topics here that are special situations. Inactivating a giver is our next topic, bottom of page 3 if you're following along in your book, if you have a book. How do we inactivate a giver? Inactivating a giver, first let me mention, if somebody is no longer coming, they're no longer donating, we often recommend keeping the record for your historical purposes. If they have no giving, you can delete the record, but if they have giving, you can't delete it. You can mark them inactive, though, and that will prevent them from showing up everywhere unless you check off that you want to show or print inactive people. A good way to see the whole picture is go Manage Givers. Manage Givers will show you your donation-only givers, people that only have a record in donations, and people from membership, visitors, members, any of your categories, anybody in people. It defaults, if you look in the lower left, to just show active people. If we want to mark a donation giver inactive, we would do that right here in the Manage Givers screen. And you can tell who your donation-only records are by this last column, Donation Giver. The system puts the check here when you go up to Givers and do Add Individual or Add Group. It knows that's a record you're just adding to donations, so it checks that to let you know this record only exists in donations unless you created a duplicate over in membership. If you want to mark one of these inactive, we just click on that record or that line here. Upper right, we just check inactive. And now that Jeffrey Alexander record is only going to show on reports or searches unless I indicate I want that to include inactive people. Now, if you have a membership record, and I'm at the top of 4, let's look at Karen Bartholomew here. If I click on her, notice in the upper right, inactive is grayed out, and it tells me, edit, delete this record in the membership module. So we would need to go over to membership and mark that record inactive in membership. Really quickly, I'll show you. I'm not going to go into a lot of discussion here about membership, though, just because we're talking really about donations. But if I look for Karen Bartholomew, I can bring up her record, and then I'd find the inactive checkbox, which we see it's here on the individual record, but your fields could be in a different order. So yours might be in a different spot. We'll say she withdrew, today's date. And now if I save that, close here. And now I think I need to refresh my givers. Now notice I don't see Karen. The only way I'm going to be able to bring Karen up is by showing inactive in the lower left. And now I can see she shows in red. I also want to show you an example we have from the book is if we go to enter donations, you still can enter giving for people you've terminated. So if we'll go ahead and put Sunday's date. The book mentions Ruth Asbell, so we'll look for Ruth. Ruth is not coming up when I start typing Ruth Asbell. If I check just above the giver field, I check inactive. Now, oh, whoops, thought I was typing. Here we go. And I start typing Ruth and spell it right. Here we see Ruth in the list. Notice she shows in red. So I can add giving for my terminated people. Here I just want you to see if we scroll this list of people, here we see some people we've marked inactive. There's Karen that we just marked inactive. You just saw me do that. So if I have that inactive checkbox checked, then I can see those inactive people and go ahead and add giving for them if needed. All right. Now, if we flip to page 5, we talk about a gift from an estate. Maybe you've marked someone active, it's been a while, and suddenly you get a gift from the estate of that deceased individual. Here's the way we recommend adding that into the system. We recommend going up to givers and then add individual. And then you're going to add this person as a donations individual giver. So here you could put for the first name, you don't have to give them a giver number, but for the first name, you're going to put estate of, and then for the last name, excuse me, here we'll put the estate of, so we'll put Ruth, because that's what I was working at, and then tab over to last name, and in the last name field, that's where we would put Asbel. And then we would go ahead and add anything else we need and click Add Giver, and then finished adding givers. Once we're done, if we had to add more, the screen will stay up until you say finished. And now if I look in Manage Givers, whoops, and type it correctly, we see here our estate of Ruth Asbel. You go ahead and enter that donation as you normally would. And then after, if that's the only gift they're giving, then you could come back and mark Ruth inactive, or the estate of Ruth Asbel is inactive, and go ahead and print their statement. Once you're done printing their statement, you might want to come on in here, find Ruth again. Remember, if you marked her inactive, maybe wait until after you do the statement to mark her inactive and do this at once. You can mark her inactive or the estate inactive, and also uncheck receive statement if you don't anticipate needing a statement the next year. If the estate's going to give money every year, then you might want to leave receive statement checked. And you could still leave it inactive and still get a statement and enter donations if needed. All right, like I said, lots of little topics here. The next little topic we have is the bottom of page 5, about halfway through time-wise, so I think I'm doing all right. Good. Next is changing a giver number. Maybe sometimes you assign a giver number and you need to change that number. You can do that in 2 different places, but what happens in those 2 places is a little different. If we go to Manage Givers, we can change a number here, but if we just change a number right here, then you're going to lose the history. You're not going to lose entries of money and gifts you've entered. You're going to lose the history of any other numbers they had in the past. So let me just show you. If we go to Manage Numbers, we can upper right check past, current, and future. I'm not going to check future. Let's see. Well, let's filter by selected giver. Let me find a different giver that maybe has more history. Here we go. Let's take Jack Albin, for example. We can see that he currently has number 7, but in the past he had number 216. So let me show you what happens. If I go to Manage Givers and I find Jack with number 7, I can click right here on the number and type in a new one. I'm just putting a random one in there. Now if I close out of here, I still have all of his giving history. I haven't lost any giving history, but if I go to Manage Numbers now and I look for Jack, and I ask to show past and current, and I filter just by that giver, I don't have a history of him having that number 7 at all at any point. It's now just changed to show that since 2012, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you want to retain the history of a number changing from one person to the next, then don't just change the number right here in Manage Givers. What you'd want to do, we'll change that back to 12. Oops, you know what? I picked the wrong number. Bad tech. I don't remember what number he had. So let's go ahead, though. I'm going to show you how we can end a giver number, which is what you would want to do, end a number, and then you could assign that person the new number you want to give them and still retain the history. And it also frees up that number for someone else. So to do that, we're going to go to Givers and Manage Numbers. I'm at the middle of page 7 if you're following along. Here I'm just going to find a person. They said Samuel Allen. Let's see if we have Samuel Allen. No, so I'm just going to find a person here. We want to take away Stuart Bernard's number 206 and give him a new number. So what I'm going to do is click the minus at the end of the line, or you can click right in the end date column and change it there. I like to click the minus at the end of the line, and that brings up a window where I have some different choices. If you choose delete, then that's going to delete the number and any history of having it. Again, it won't delete giving, but that would delete the number entirely. In this case, though, we want a history. So we're going to say stop using the giver number, and I'll say as of this Sunday, and click OK. And now, notice Stuart's name is in the upper left because that's who I was just working with. Now that I've deleted that number from him, I can click, or not deleted, ended it, I can click Add New, and type in a new number for him. Now I need to change the start date because I ended his number Sunday. So through this Sunday, the system will show that he has a number. If I were to show past, I would see that number still. So I'm going to make that today's date that his new number starts and click OK. And now if we filter just by Stuart and we show past, we can see his old 206 number. I didn't delete it. All I did was put an end date on it. And his new number has a new start date. So as of 5/7, if I go to enter donations, that new number will work. Prior to that, I would need to use his old number. All right. Oops, now I jumped ahead. I kind of showed you how to change a giver number instead of how to end and assign it to another user. Now his number was 206 and I ended on 5/5. So if I'd want, I can assign that to someone else. Ms. Andrea Brown does not have a number. Make sure 206. So we're going to go ahead and give her 206. So I'll choose Andrea Brown and then just click Add New and put 206. Now if I click OK, it's going to tell me, whoops, no, Stuart still has that through 5/5. So what I can do is, as of 5/6, Ms. Andrea Brown can now have number 206. So if I say OK, we now see Andrea has that number. So pretty easy to delete, add numbers, change numbers. Again, you can do that on the Manage Givers screen. I didn't show you how to change it here. To change it, we just click on it and type in the number we want them to have, click off of it, and we see that new number. But that erases the history of that old number that I just changed it from. So if you want to retain a history of somebody having a number and then changing a new one and then a new one, it's better to go to Givers and Manage Numbers and put the end date on the number and then start your new number. That helps you retain the number history, whereas just deleting or changing it in Manage Givers does not retain the history of whatever number you just removed from their record. All right, I think that was everything I wanted to show you.